Hello and welcome to the IslesNation Podcast. I'm Pete Truskowski, also known as at NYIslesNation. I'm joined tonight by Carey Haber and Mike Rankiewski. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well, Pete. How about yourself tonight?
Doing all right. Carey, how are you?
Good, good. I'm feeling better and doing well.
All right, so three games down in this series between the Islanders and the Lightning, and the Islanders find themselves trailing the series 2-1 after a heartbreaking loss last night, where the Islanders had a lead in the last minute of regulation, blew it, and then lost it early in overtime on a weird, controversial play where Thomas Hickey got hit up high, and then Brian Boyle, who hit him, was wide open at the side of the net to put home a rebound. So the Islanders have lost two straight now after coming out in game one and winning. Are the Islanders in a bad position here? Are you worried that last night, the way the game happened with having a whole lead in the last minute, that whole emotional letdown of losing that game, a game that you're 30 seconds away from winning, do you think that'll be too much for this team to overcome, or are they still very much in this series?
I think they're still very much in this series. The one thing this team has done this season, more than recent years, is they seem to have a knack to, when it looks like they should be deflated, to come back with a strong performance. So I don't think they're out of it. I think, yeah, it's obviously, it definitely sucks in the interim or in the immediate that they lost the game last night with 38 seconds left, blew the lead and then lost a few minutes into overtime. So it definitely stings. I mean, it's not fun the next couple of days having this long break, but the team seems to have a good ability this year. Even in the playoffs against Florida last round, they lose game four at home. People start to question, oh, look, this is the Capital Series all over again. We're going to get bombed in game five, and we're going to lose in seven. Blah 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 blah. And they obviously go out, they win a double overtime in game five, double overtime game in six, and that's all she wrote. So I think this team is resilient. I think they'll have another good game on Friday. And they played well last night. I don't think that then lost in all this blowing the lead late is they actually played I think their best game of the playoffs, just from start to finish as far as how much they generate offensively. They obviously a little bit loose in their own end defensively, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. But I think offensively they played their best game of the playoffs, and they scored 4 goals. You score 4 goals in a playoff game, you're probably going to win 90% of the time. Unfortunately, last night was in that 10% range where they got outscored by a very good offensive team in Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say they're in a good position. We've all, I think, over the last couple of years have seen that, the stats that if you go down 2-1, that team wins the series 2 out of 3 times, and that's if, the rosters are equal. So, look, they got to win 3 out of 4 against the Eastern Conference champions. I wouldn't say that's an enviable position, so to speak, but by no means is it a dire position to be in either. I mean, there's still obviously at maximum 4 games left in this series, and the Islanders, I think, have shown that they can at least compete with this Lightning team, and whether that's because they're a little bit depleted right now or not doesn't matter, because there's no brownie points or anything for being hurt. So I think if you look at the first 3 games, I think it's been a pretty even affair, so to speak, and the one thing I will say is one of the things that I thought coming into this series was, similar to last one, was goaltending, and Ben Bishop has not been very good. The Islanders have scored a lot of goals on him, and like you said, Mike, if that continues and Thomas Greiss goes back to playing at even a level below where he was against Florida, by no means would it be impossible that this team can win 3 or 4, but to say that it's not going to be tough against a team like Tampa Bay, I think that would also be a little bit naive to say that too. So what it comes down to is obviously the mindset is 1 game at a time, but they certainly have to win game 4 at this point. I think we would all agree with that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's suggesting that it will be easy to win 3 or 4, but I think it's fair to say that the Islanders have shown over the first 3 games they can generate offense against this team a little more consistently than they did against Florida for whatever reason. Again, whether it's because Florida was just a bigger team and for stretches were able to pin the Islanders in their own end with their bigger bodies, and Tampa plays more of a skill/finesse game, and maybe that's a little bit more advantageous for the Islanders. But it's going to be tough, but there's no reason why, if the Islanders play like they did last night, that they can't win 3 or 4. Again, I think they'll get chances on Ben Bishop, who, while he let up 4 goals last night, I thought he made a couple big saves, especially in the first period when the Islanders really were all over Tampa Bay. And to me, that was the big turning point of the game, essentially, was at the end of the first period, which the Islanders, for the most part, dominated the period. It's a 1-1 game. The Islanders couldn't get that second goal and really put Tampa Bay behind the 8 ball. It was, Bishop kept them in the game, and that's good for him in that sense. He wasn't great overall as far as the numbers go, but he made big saves when he had to be. So yeah, it'll be tough to win 3 or 4, but I think this team against Tampa Bay can do it. Will I guarantee it for sure? No, but before the series, I thought the Islanders would win a long series, and I'm not going to change that prediction right now.
Yeah, what I think is interesting too is, like, you point out how good Ben Bishop was in the first period last night, and he was. I mean, the Islanders, I saw outchanced Tampa from like high danger areas 7-1 in that first period and only scored 1 goal. Obviously, it turned out to be regrettable for them, but this is the type of series that they're in, that they still were able to score 4 goals in that game, and that works both ways. Where similarly, Tampa is kind of carving through the Islanders' defense right now and putting a lot of goals past Thomas Greiss. And I don't think that this is the team that you want to get into a shootout with, because you essentially put yourself in a position where you need to score 4 or 5 goals every night. Even without Stamkos, their top 6 is pretty phenomenal. And the way that they're kind of carving through the neutral zone and getting to soft spots in the offensive zone through our defense is a little bit alarming to me. I feel like there's got to be a way that they can hunker down and kind of protect their blue line a little more, make Tampa dump it in deep and actually retrieve the puck as opposed to walking right in, because this is one thing that I would almost guarantee. If they need to score at least 4 goals a game over the next 4, they're not going to win this series. They're not going to be able to outscore Tampa like that.
3 things you guys touched on, I think. One, absolutely, that the Islanders in this series are playing much better hockey than they did in the Panthers series, which honestly we should have expected, because the Islanders were not very good in the Panthers series, and they were lucky to escape that series. Thomas Greiss was phenomenal. But as for the brand of hockey, I think this series has been a lot more entertaining. Obviously, the goals reflect that, and the Tampa Bay Lightning are a dynamic team. But what's kind of encouraging to me and kind of discouraging at the same time is the Islanders are putting up these goals, and John Tavares only has 1 goal in the series, and it was on a power play. And we got guys like Josh Bailey and Shane Prince contributing. So it's a catch-22. If we keep playing like this, you got to think John Tavares is going to come around. But if John Tavares doesn't come around, it's kind of a scary proposition, because Victor Hedman's one of the top defensemen in the league. And last year in the playoffs, he showed he could shut down top players. So if Hedman could basically neutralize Tavares, I don't see us doing that with Kucherov. Obviously, last night, Kucherov scored with 38 seconds left. The triplets line of Palat and Johnson is dynamic, and they could score at will, basically. So if Tavares is going to get shut down by Hedman, I don't trust the likes of Josh Bailey and Brock Nelson to outscore Nikita Kucherov and Tyler Johnson.
Well, the one thing I will say in defense of Tavares is, especially last night, he had a couple really nice setups. One to cool him in late in the game when it was 4-3, one to Oposo, I think it was in the second period or maybe even early in the third. So he was creative offensively. He drew a penalty on Kucherov in the corner late in the first, I believe it was. So I still think, he hasn't obviously put up the points that he put up against Florida, where he had 9 points in 6 games, and so far he only has 2. But I think he's still creating offensively. I think the goals will come if he continues to play with this type of this brand of hockey. And there are going to be times when Hedman is going to have a great shift against him, and Tavares is going to not have a dominant shift, and that's just the nature of the game. When you have a top-tier defenseman versus a top-tier forward, they're both going to essentially win their battles on shifts or periods, and it's a matter of just keep plugging along, and hopefully you get the next one. But I did think last night he made a couple of really nice plays offensively to set up some of his line mates, and unfortunately, I think even Quine missed one. I think he fanned on a puck I think it went right between his legs, if I remember correctly, in the slot. So, not to say that the guaranteed goals, or that's why he's not having a good series or a great offensive series. But if his alignments kind of bury those grade A chances that he sets up, then all of a sudden we're looking at it and say, yeah, he's got a goal and 4 assists, or goal and 3 assists in 3 games, and we're up 2-1. So I agree with you. They of course need him to score a couple goals, but I think he's done a pretty good job overall of creating offense for his line, even if he hasn't put the puck in the back of the net yet.
Yeah, I mean, what made Tavares' performance in the first round so remarkable is how rare it is that we see essentially an NBA-style takeover occur in the NHL playoffs. It doesn't happen very often, so I'm not concerned at all with Tavares. I mean, obviously, I think it's clear he hasn't been as good in terms of the score sheet in this round, but he still has 2 points in 3 games. Like Mike said, I thought he had a very strong game last night. But this is one of the things about the NHL playoffs is you do need production from pretty much your entire lineup to go deep, and that is because it's so rare that one player is able to take over a series like he did in the first round. So I see it as very encouraging that the Islanders are starting to see production from their other lines, and I would not be alarmed about Tavares at all. The only thing that I am a little, I guess, cautioned by is there was a long stretch in the first period where Tavares, it didn't appear that he really saw the ice that much, and a lot of it is, I think, because they were trying to keep him away from Hedman. And to be fair, he didn't play against Hedman a ton last night, but the whole point of having the matchup at home is to control that matchup, and even if that means going up against Hedman for a handful of shifts at home, I'd like to see Tavares, leading the team in ice time for forwards every single night at this point in the season. So that's just one thing. If I were going to critique anything, is that I feel like he should far and away be on the ice as much as humanly possible, especially at even strength.
I mean, speaking of the secondary scoring, well, I was gonna talk about Ryan Strome, but obviously you tie it back to Brock Nelson. I guess we'll talk about them both. What did you guys think of the decision of Capuano to bench Strome in favor of Bailey, and then obviously, or even more so, in favor of Brock Nelson, who has been just, again, second year in a row in playoffs. He looks like he doesn't understand the speed of what's going on, and it's discouraging because 25 goal scorer in the season, you really expect a little bit more from him. So what are you guys' thoughts on the whole Strome / Nelson / Bailey / whatever forward you think should come out of the lineup in favor of one of those guys?
The thing with Strome for me is last year was at the start of the year in the 2014-15 season. Strome saw some healthy scratches. He saw some time on the fourth line. And that was all because Capuano wanted him to improve his play away from the puck. He was taking some bad penalties, making some dumb decisions, dumb turnovers. And as the season went on, he really improved his game. And that wasn't much of an issue. And he was one of the better forwards in the playoffs playing with Tavares last year. Down the stretch, he put up over 50 points in the regular season. And this whole year, Strome seemed lost. And in the playoffs, I mean, in Game 1, he set up 2 beautiful goals to Shane Prince after getting back from a healthy scratch in games 5 and 6. And you thought that maybe a light turned on in his head. And then in Game 2, he was back to the Ryan Strome that has his head up his ass. He's turning the puck over and not creating much. But that doesn't excuse the fact that Brock Nelson now, in 2 years, outside of Game 1 in the Panthers series, all 3 Game 1s he's played, Brock Nelson has been one of the better players on the ice. I don't know if that says anything, if that's like him catching a team off guard, or if he's trying to, maybe as the pressure wears on in a series, he shrivels. But this is a guy that the Islanders consider a large part of their future, obviously. 2 straight years of 20 goals. And if he can't raise his game in the playoffs, Alan Hahn on Hahn Humpty actually said it today. He's playing, and Mike just said it basically. He's basically one of the only Islanders that hasn't elevated their game from the playoffs to the regular season, and it happened last year too. So I mean, Josh Bailey, I mean, in the first round he wasn't good, but this guy has a history of playing well in the playoffs, and he has talent. There's no denying that. So, I mean, obviously you don't want to see Ryan Strome scratch because I feel outside of Tavares, Ryan Strome is the best game-breaking talent we have, even though he hasn't shown it much this year. So if Hedman's going to shut down Tavares, I trust in Strome to be able to make an impact on the game if he's at the top of his game. I don't have that trust in Brock Nelson. So honestly, if I'm Capuano on Friday, I'm sitting Nelson and playing Strome. Because not only does Nelson not contribute offensively, but he's just as lost as Strome away from the puck in these playoffs.
Yeah, well, in terms, I agree with you on Strome and the fact that he's probably the most dynamic forward we have outside of Tavares on this team, which for better or worse is kind of the reality. And if they are going to play this type of style against a team like Tampa, it doesn't seem like it makes any logical sense to be scratching as an offensive talent like that when you're trying to compete against a team that has all that offensive talent and you're trying to go toe for toe against them. So yeah, he should be in the lineup. In terms of Nelson, if he should be the guy to sit, I mean, yes, but at this point, I don't want to. I feel like it would be inconsistent for me to say that they should scratch him because relative to some other players on the roster, he has more upside than they do to score a goal. And believe me, he hasn't shown it at all. But I'm just not sold that like a punishment scratching is gonna accomplish all that much at this point in the season, and that's essentially what scratching him would be. I definitely think it's a problem. I don't want to gloss over the fact that it is a problem, obviously.
But is it a punishment scratching more, or is it just icing the best players you have right now? Is the question.
I'm not sure that if you're talking and you're looking for offense and you're trying to beat this team with offense, to me that means that you got to go with guys that have the most upside to put the puck in the net, and Nelson has more upside to do that than other players that would be in the lineup over him. Again, though, I mean, that doesn't mean that he's off the table in the offseason because this is obviously a persistent thing over the last couple of years where, I mean, it's not even just the playoffs in particular. Like, the guy comes out gangbusters, and then by the time February, March comes around, his production drops pretty dramatically. So, I don't want to gloss over that, but at the same time, I want to be consistent with what I'm saying. And if we do want to put as much offense as we can into the lineup, that means that we need to be putting in as much upside into the lineup. And he's still got that upside over guys like Kuhlman, who's been very bad, and like Steve Bernier and guys like that. So, but that's why I do think it's a bit of a punishment.
Yeah, you know what, though? But he hasn't done it yet this series yet or this playoffs, and as you said, it's inconsistency of how he plays offensively, and I don't see it as a punishment type of benching. I agree with Pete. I think it's more of we need to put our best 12 forwards on the ice, and I think you can make a very strong case that he has not been one of the 12 best forwards out of the 13 that have played so far in these playoffs. So I don't think it's necessarily a punishment to bench him. I think it's he's not creating offensively. He's not really helping on the power play a ton right now this series. The power play hasn't exactly been great. He's not killing penalties this series. I know he has the ability to, or at least every now and then they put him in a situation to do so. But he has made some really, really bad defensive plays.
I totally agree.
And again, I'm not.
No, I know.
I don't think. I mean, listen. I don't expect him to be a Selke Award finalist, but he's made some really bad plays, some very soft plays, and I don't think it's a punishment at all. I think it's a matter of he hasn't been very good. So I agree with you on Strome in the sense that, hey, he's one of our better forwards creatively, and in this series, I think they need as much of that as possible. And to me, it's, Bill Simmons had a thing where he called it the table test. Does the guy bring something to the table? Does he take something off the table? Or, does he essentially net more bringing to the table than taking stuff off? And I think that's what Strome right now is. He's not great defensively. He's going to struggle in that end. He's going to struggle against bigger forwards. But offensively, he has enough creativity where if he's playing well, as Pete mentioned, he can be hopefully that second dynamic forward to maybe and really try to catalyst the line. So I think Strome definitely brings much more to the table than he potentially takes off. And in a series like this, as you both mentioned, where they need offense, that's the guy I turn to for Game 4.
Carey, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Since you're such a proponent of putting the best offensive weapons we have out there, you're also the biggest non-Michael Del Cole into the lineup supporter that I know, and you're 100% against that idea.
Yep.
So what's the difference there? Because
Michael Del Cole had 1 assist in 6 games in Bridgeport. I don't think it would be a lot different if the guy came in and put in a point per game in the AHL, but he had 1 assist in the last game that he played there and was scoreless before that. So if we're expecting him to come in and be a positive at all at this level, and and forgetting the stats, I mean, I've said this to you guys offline back in training camp, and maybe it's improved a little bit, but I can't imagine it has that much. His skating was just not even close to being up to snuff for what the NHL, especially the NHL playoffs, would kind of lend itself to. So the reason I'm against him being in the lineup is simply because I don't think he's physically ready to play in the NHL, and the AHL stats, albeit over 6 games, they kind of bear that out. He really struggled. He really struggled in his time there, it seemed like, and guys that actually saw him can relay that a lot better than I could, and it seems like everyone was kind of on the same page that he's not ready yet, and that's why. But I do want to take it back to the upside part, and with Nelson, as bad as he's been, he has 5 points in 9 games, which is 3rd on the team in scoring, tied for it, and so that's kind of what I'm getting at with the upside. It's really tough for me to bench a guy like that when you have a guy like Steve Bernier, who is a fine replacement, 13th type forward, but I mean, Steve Bernier is just not he doesn't have the potential to give as much as Brock Nelson does, and if I'm going to go down in this series, I'd rather go down playing the guys that got me there to begin with, and that's Nelson. So, if it was between just Nelson or Strome and they had 11 other guys that made sense to be in the lineup, I would agree with you guys, but I don't think that's the case here. I think that I think both of them should be in the lineup right now, and you just kind of have to hope that they work through it and are able to provide some of that offense. I don't see any other way that this team's going to get themselves back in the series if they try to grind it out against Tampa. It's just not going to happen. They're too explosive.
So we're giving a lot of players the benefit of the doubt here. And on my timeline, I saw a lot of Islander fans after last night's game and this morning asking about Jarl Halak's availability, asking if he's going to be ready to play, if he should play over Grice. And that just bothers me because, honestly, at least the rest of this season, this team is Thomas Grice's team, and Jarl Halak should not even be talked about. I mean, this guy, single-handedly almost, him and John Tavares won us their first playoff series in 23 years. Yeah, has he given up a lot of goals in the first 3 games? Yeah, he has, but at the same time, the team around him is not helping him. There's shots from high danger areas. I mean, look at the goals he gave up last night. The only one where he had any chance was the Hedman bomb from the point off the faceoff, and that's not an easy save to make either. So, I mean, you're leaving guys wide open in the slot, empty net tap-ins because you're not getting back in overtime. I mean, if there's anyone on this team that deserves the benefit of the doubt right now, it's Thomas Grice.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%, Pete. It's to think that he was going to continue to play the same level he did against Florida is a little bit naive. And he was incredible against Florida, but people need to realize that Tampa Bay is better offensively, and while Florida definitely had a lot of chances, they don't have as explosive an offense or as many finishers as Tampa Bay does. So that's one of the reasons now why the goals have been a little bit more frequent against him. But he still played, I think, well in all 3 games. I mean, yes, you can make the argument the Hedman goal in Game 3 was savable, and I think it was the second goal in Game 2 where it beat him 5-hole, kind of off a broken play, if I remember correctly, that he probably should have had. But he's given the team a chance to win all 3 games, and the goals, especially in Game 3 that he allowed. I mean, guys are just hanging out in the slot. No one's putting a body on Kucherov, just hanging out, 10 feet in front of him. I mean, it's at some point, yeah, you obviously you want the goalie to make a save, but your defense and your forwards need to actually come back and make a smart play and help you out a little bit. I think it's unfair to expect him to play a .950 save percentage for another playoff round, especially against an offense as dynamic as this. So I'm completely on board with you. I think fans or anyone else giving Greiss a hard time or clamoring for Halak to come back now, it's a misguided notion. It's very much we lost the last 2 games and we have allowed 9 goals and 8 of them by Greiss, so we need to change something up. I just think it's too reactionary. As you said, he was one of the 2 main reasons why we're here in the first place. So I just think that's people just the fact that we're down there just looking for something to grasp onto. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Greiss has been that great in this series, but I also don't think it really matters. Like, I think this locker room is so far behind him right now that it sends the absolute wrong message to even consider taking him out. He hasn't been the reason why, they're down 2-1, and even if he was, I don't think it would be the right call. And I want to actually go back to the back-to-back in the Florida series, and something that I read online, but it kind of stuck with me, and I think it makes a lot of sense. There was a lot of debate. We had it on this show on if the Islanders should go with Greiss or Berube in Game 2 of that series, and I was pretty kind of firmly in the go with Berube camp for a while, and obviously they ultimately went with Greiss, and I think it was really symbolic for a couple of reasons. Obviously, Greiss played well in that game, but it sent a message that this was his team. After a huge win in Game 1 where he made a big save late, it was very clear that, again, the room was behind him. He was one of the major reasons they were in the playoffs to begin with. And I just think it was the right call for a lot of reasons. And to kind of basically go back against that now because a guy who hasn't played hockey in 2 months, as good of a goalie as he is ready, seems to me like it just sends the complete wrong message to the team. I mean, at this point, this is Thomas Greiss's team in terms of goaltending, and there's really no scenario where I would pull him out of the net, and any scenario where that becomes a viable option is a very, very, very bad one for the Islanders.
It sounds like something somebody who just follows the advanced stats would make the case for. I don't think it's anything in any type of reality that they would go to anyone besides Greiss, short of Greiss becoming injured in the next couple of days or asking not to play, which obviously is never going to happen. So anyone who's clamoring for JF Berube to play a back-to-back, for Halak to maybe play if he comes back in the next couple of days, to me it's video game stuff. It's not really seeped in any type of reality that, as you said, the locker room, I think, is very much on board with Greiss, and if they decided at any point to pull him, even if he had a bad game, would just completely be, I think you'd completely lose the locker room at that point.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, honestly, like, whether you're talking about putting a goaltender into the second round of the playoffs who hasn't played in over 2 months now, even stats or not, that just seems so irresponsible. Again, even with Greiss not, being at his best during the series, and I think we would all agree he hasn't been. But it's not like, again, it's not like he's been dreadful. He's still, putting up games over, 900 save percentage every single time, pretty much. I just feel like, I don't know. I agree with you. It sends the wrong message, and this team has gotten to this point with Thomas Greiss as their goaltender, and they're going to have to, if they're going to get further than this, it's got to be with Thomas Greiss as their goaltender.
And that leads me to my next point. We were talking about how Thomas Greiss has kind of been left out to dry so far in this series. And I think a main reason for that is the decline in play from the regular season to now of the Islanders' second pair, Johnny Boychuk and Calvin DeHaan. If you guys remember, during the regular season, for most of the time, Nick Leddy played with Johnny Boychuk and Calvin DeHaan played with Travis Hamonic. For some reason, Coach Capuano decided to split that up. I don't know if it's because Leddy and Hamonic gives him, in my opinion, our two best defensemen at one, and they can both skate and they can both play in their own zone. They can both play in the offensive zone, so if that gives him a higher end top pairing, that's what he's looking for. But I mean, you had two good pairings there, and right now the Boychuk DeHaan pairing is a tire fire in their own zone. I mean, they caused some goals last night with their inability to clear the puck. So I mean, is there cause for concern there? And with Pulak back, I think the obvious answer is that you sit Jadlicki. But I mean, obviously you're not going to sit Johnny Boychuk in at $7.5 million, which at this point kind of scares me for the next 6 years. And I mean, Calvin DeHaan's been in Capuano's doghouse in the past. So I mean, these two got to step their games up. And I really don't like Calvin DeHaan's passive attitude where he's retweeting fans talking crap about him on Twitter. Like, buddy, like, yeah, like you're better than us because you're in the NHL, but you got to pick your shit up.
Yeah, he's been terrible. He's been terrible all playoffs, and yes, Boychuk has definitely struggled as well. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's had a great playoffs. He clearly hasn't. I do think Boychuk brings more to the, again, going back to that table test, I think Boychuk brings more to it because he has more offensive ability in the sense he's got a bomb of a shot, and I think he's trying to get more pucks to the net. I still think DeHaan, for whatever reason, over the last 7 years has never really developed since he's been drafted a really solid offensive game. And yeah, Pete, I kind of get annoyed when athletes, and it's not just DeHaan, but any athlete kind of starts being passive aggressive on Twitter or on Facebook at fans. It's like, you know what, buddy, you're right. You're in the NHL. You're clearly a better player than me or anyone else who's on Twitter. But come on, like, just you get paid to do a job, and you're doing it poorly at this point. I mean, don't act like all high and mighty and all pissy because fans are calling you out about it. I mean, that's kind of comes with the territory. No one's saying anything personal about you, just to say, you know, they're just saying your game sucks at this point. But DeHaan he struggled. I think, again, Boychuk has definitely struggled some. I think Boychuk is a little more physical, so I think that's an element the team definitely needs in the lineup. I think, again, his shot ability is something the team needs in the lineup right now. I said it offline to you guys, and I stick by it. If Pulak is ready for Friday, I would play him over DeHaan. I know Carey will have a different mindset, especially he'll probably go more towards the lines being shifted, which it's not a terrible idea by any stretch. But assuming that Capuano is going to maintain Leddy and Hamonic as his top pairing, then I think I would really seriously consider sitting DeHaan for Pulak come Friday night.
Yeah, I would go back to the pairings that have historically worked for this team, which is putting Leddy back with Boychuk and Hamonic and DeHaan together. I mean, the DeHaan-Boychuk pairing just does not work. I don't know what else needs to really be said at this point. Both of them have been turnover machines. And, I understand the methodology behind putting your two best defensemen together as a top pairing, and I think it works in theory, but given the way that the rest of the defense is constructed right now, it's not working in practice. I saw something today about zone exits and how Nick Leddy has been one of the best in the playoffs and how Johnny Boychuk has been one of the worst in the playoffs. And Calvin DeHaan is just simply not, I don't think, good enough to make up for the fact that Boychuk, really struggles getting out of his own zone at this point. Nick Leddy is. So put those guys back together as your offensive pairing. And, Travis Hamonic and Calvin DeHaan historically are a very, very good shutdown pairing. To me, it makes a whole lot of sense to have them matched up against the triplets pretty much for the remainder of the series. You don't need to get the offense out of them, but you do need to keep those guys off the board. And that's a very well-constructed pairing that has worked that I think can do that. And then what you do is that you open up the door for Leddy and Boychuk to be placed in more offensive situations, ideally with the John Tavares line against maybe Tampa's, third and fourth lines and, their non-Victor Hedman pairing. So I just think at this point, I've been saying this, a lot of other people have been saying this since the middle of the first round, but I don't think these pairings work at all. I think this team has one functional pairing at this point that's actually making a difference, and I think they got to spread the wealth around a little bit because even Letty and Hamonic, as good as they've been, they were on for a goal against yesterday too. I just think that you have and the way that the defense is constructed, you have a good opportunity for a very, very legit shutdown pairing, which opens up, your best defenseman, actually your two best offensive defensemen, really, to go play offense. And I think it's a missed opportunity to not take advantage of that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The only pairing I feel confident with them out there is Letty and Hamnick. And at the same time, if they're entrusted to shut down the other team's top lines, they're not doing a very good job of that this series. Kucherov has goals, Tyler Johnson has a goal, I believe, Palat has a goal. They're getting their goals. So, why not just spread it out and try and get something going there? But that leads me to my next point, which is the fact that I don't feel like Kyle Oposo has been the Kyle Oposo that we need him to be, and that he's been in the past in the playoffs. And I think he might be costing himself some money with his, I won't say bad playoffs, but non-impactful playoffs, to say the least. And, if he's playing with Tavares, you need Oposo to be Oposo. Because when Oposo's Oposo, he's one of the better wingers in the game. At this point, he hasn't been good. He fumbled the puck on a partial breakaway last night. And this also leads me to a point I'm surprised I haven't touched on yet. Why the hell were him and Tavares out there in the last minute defending a one-goal lead? I know the answer to that question is that Franz Nielsen's line was just out there and they might have been tired. And you put Tavares and Oposo out there to try and get the empty netter to seal the deal. But, you got to take a time out there and get your best defensive unit out there, in my opinion.
Well, he had Nielsen out there. Nielsen was actually in the slot covering some imaginary guy that wasn't there. He was on his knees. And Kucherov was literally like 3 feet away from him, so I'm not really sure what Nielsen was doing. But Nielsen was clearly on the ice, and yeah, I agree. I would not have had Oposo on the ice by any stretch. To me, he defensively is just unaware in his own end, which is a little bit mind-boggling at 28 years old, and he's obviously been in the league for 7, 8 years now, whatever the exact number is. So the fact that he is still very unaware defensively is definitely cause for concern, and obviously one of the reasons that people would be hesitant about giving him a big contract this summer. But I was actually okay with Tavares being out there, especially because the Islanders, seemingly their strategy was, let's just ice the puck as many times as possible the last couple minutes. So I don't mind them having a second center out there. Tavares was clearly their best face-off guy, and he has been all season, I think. So definitely no issue with that. With Tavares out there, but I agree. I would have definitely not had Oposo out there. I would have maybe had Nielsen, Tavares, either Clutterbuck or somebody else with a little bit more speed out there who can kind of just buzz around the zone and create some havoc defensively. But it was definitely a questionable decision. But then again, these are, at some point, you expect with a minute to go, if you have certain guys out there, yes, they maybe not be your best defensive guys, but they've played long enough to kind of know what they need to do and shouldn't do and responsibility and who should be covering what position. It was essentially looked like 5 guys were all watching the puck, and I think that was the part of Nielsen's mistake, is he was watching Drouin kind of play with the puck on the boards, and by the time he realized what was happening, Kucherov had the puck in the slot, was putting it in the net. So yeah, I don't love obviously Oposo out there late. Obviously, I understand people not liking Tavares out there either, but a minute to go, these are technically your veteran players who have been around, who should know what to do and what not to do. I don't have a huge issue with them being trusted out there. I really prefer not to have Oposo, but I'm not going to kill Capuano either in that spot. I think there's a little bit of you have to trust your guys to make the right play there.
Yeah, I agree. Players just have to execute there. I think, I think that it's kind of Monday morning quarterback on that. Like, the last 2 shifts before that, he had the fourth line out. He had the Nielsen line out. He double shifted Nielsen. I can't blame the guy for expecting that his best forwards, will get the job done and, are able to kill 45 seconds. I think that's a very fair expectation for, the 3 guys that wear letters on this team to be able to do that. Didn't happen last night. Look, it happens, but I don't think this is a bad coaching decision at all. Players really just got to do their jobs there. In terms of Oposo, holistically, obviously he's snake bit right now. He has 37 shots in 9 games, which means he's getting over 4 shots per game, and he only has 1 goal. I think if the Islanders continue to play deep into the playoffs, that number will go up. It's just kind of one of those things where Oposo is obviously a better scorer than 2.5% shooting percentage, so I think ultimately that would get better. I don't really have much of a complaint about his game overall because I think it's a step up in general from what we see during the season because he's not obviously getting the puck on net 4 times per game during the regular season. But there's no question that post-op brain farts are still a thing. They happen, they occur, but that's obviously just part of Kyle's game. I don't really have any complaints about where he's at right now. I think ultimately if he keeps doing what he's doing, the puck will start finding the net for him.
So what do the Islanders have to do to come back and win this series?
I think they need to play the exact same way offensively they did in Game 3, where they really, I think, control. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think it was their best offensive performance of the playoffs. Not just because they scored 4 goals. They created a lot of chances. They had the puck for shifts on end in the Tampa Bay zone, especially in the first period. So if they had that effort offensively, I think they've shown the ability they can put 3-4 pucks behind Bishop pretty routinely. And defensively, they just need to be tighter in their own end. Again, I understand Tampa Bay presents challenges of a lot of skill, a lot of speed up front with their top 6 especially. I just think the team needs to do a better job of not watching the puck and not kind of getting mesmerized by Tampa Bay buzzing around. Just, kind of stay with your guy, stay in your spot, do your job. I know it sounds like very cliche and coach-like to say, but just kind of worry about doing your job. Don't try to do someone else's, and trust that if you're playing defense in your own end, and you could pass the guy off to somebody else. That's part of the job too. That's part of what the team responsibility there. So I just think they just need to do a better job in their own end, not puck watching, and really just keeping bodies on guys. Stay close to them. Don't give Tampa Bay an opportunity to start kind of revving things up in the offensive zone by cycling and getting the kind of the engines going that way.
They really, really got to clean up their play in the neutral zone. Their gap control, especially from the defense, is just so horrendous at this point in the season. Tampa Bay does not need a whole lot of space to come in and score on you. I think we all know that by now. But the Islanders are giving them a hell of a lot of space to go do that, and that needs to stop. And I think it's a coaching tactic too because this is a pretty good defense core, and I think they all know gap control, and none of them seem to be employing it very well right now. And so that, to me, means that there is a kind of a tactic to essentially just not get beat. And by not getting beat, they're essentially getting beat because what they're doing is allowing Tampa to carry the puck in. They give up a whole lot of the soft spot in the middle of the ice to them, and they're carving away the Islanders defense right now. So for them to win this series, that essentially needs to stop. They need to essentially cut down on the amount of high danger chances that Tampa is getting. They've been outchanced in all 3 games so far, and that if that continues, again, they don't have the offensive skill to compete with Tampa, so it'll be very, very difficult to win 3 out of 4 unless that cleans itself up. And look, if they're able to clean that up and are able to protect their blue line better, that leads to transition, which leads to offense for them. So, to me, this series is going to be won or lost in the neutral zone, and right now I don't feel that the Islanders are doing a good enough job there, and that is a big reason why they're down 2-1. It's leading to a hell of a lot of chances for Tampa, And, while the Islanders are obviously getting a lot of chances themselves, Tampa's top six is just way more dynamic, and to me that's the real difference right now.
So, I mean, there's not much else to talk about with the Islanders, but I think it'd be remiss if we didn't touch on the rest of the playoffs around the league. And if you've listened to me, you know that personally I feel like hockey as a whole, the NHL, the product, has gotten worse over the years with the systems, the defensive trapping, and the amount of games that are decided by lucky bounces. And believe it or not, I think these playoffs have been one of the best playoffs in years. I feel like the quality of hockey's really up there, which is a huge plus. I mean, there's so much parity in this league. The three teams a lot of people have had to win the cup were all eliminated in round one in the West: LA, Anaheim, and Chicago. And of course, the Rangers were eliminated. They're a team that always makes deep runs. And thankfully for us, they were eliminated in round one. So I just wanted your guys' thoughts on the playoffs so far in the league, the surprises, and what do you guys have thought of the overall product out on the ice, and who you think
Yeah, no, I
will
think
end up winning it all.
I think it's been fun. Obviously, when to watch other teams when the Islanders are not playing, it's definitely a lot less stressful. And I mean, this Capitals Penguins series has been just like, God, I mean, if I'm not a cocaine guy, but I guess if I was, this would be my series. I mean, this is just really, it's really just intense. I mean, these teams are just buzzing, and it's just fun to watch. And even that Blues series with the Stars, and I know the Blues beat the crap out of them last night 6-1, but it's just amazing. These teams, they're just so much freaking talent. And it's funny because you look at the Islanders and it's almost like, well, how do we, you sure we belong in this group? And we have our moments, but some of these teams, it's like they just so hyped up on something. It's like it really is. If you're just a hockey fan and if you have no interest or no rooting interest in any of these teams, this has been a hell of a playoffs to really just kind of get your feet wet and just sit back and relax. And again, if you have no rooting interest in any of these teams, it's just been really fun to watch. So I agree with you, Pete. I think the product has been better. Obviously, I think it helps personally that the Islanders are still in it and playing, obviously, and are affected by everything that goes on this round. But it's been fun, and even as I say this, I have the Capital Penguin game on mute, and they're in overtime right now, and it's like porn. It really is fun to watch.
Yeah, these playoffs have been fantastic. Probably some of the best that we've seen over the last couple of years. The only thing that I find interesting is there's not there. Like you said, there's a lot of parity, Pete, between teams. In this league. But what I've actually found most interesting is the parity between series, like the level of play in between series. Like this Penguins Capitals series is, not to be like self-deprecating, but the level of play in the series is so far above where the Islanders and Lightning series is, and similarly, I think that the level of play in the Dallas St. Louis series has been higher than in the Nashville San Jose one. So, it's not to say it's not good hockey all around, because it is obviously, but there's very clear, I think, discrepancies between levels of play between series, and I think a lot of that, not to harp on it again, but a lot of that has to do with the playoff format. And at the same time, I think it's interesting because it provides for some level of separation in a league that a lot of people don't deem to really have much of it at all. And I think that's actually good for the league, because what it does is it creates stories, and it creates teams to watch, and it creates, obviously this Crosby-Ovechkin series. I don't know what the narrative that the media is saying, but I mean, these are two of the best players in the league, if not the two best players in the league, going up against each other. There's nothing more compelling than that, and that's what makes, what's making this stuff really, really great to watch. And I mean, I agree. This is compared to the last couple of years, I'm really, really enjoying these playoffs, and I don't think it's just because the Islanders are still in it.
No, it's funny you said that, Carey, because I originally had that thought in the round one series between the Blues and the Blackhawks. I was like, if by some miracle we made the Stanley Cup Finals, would we make it to a Game 5 against these two teams? I mean, maybe it's because we watch Islanders every night and we know all their flaws and see them at their worst. But I mean, as the Penguins win it in overtime.
Penguins just won it. Wow, who's that? Kessel? No, Hornquist.
But I mean, if you watch the Capitals series, the Penguins series, I mean, the Islanders made it through Tampa. I mean, I know we've played both these teams tight and we've had long, close series against them the last 2 years. But I mean, I just can't see the Islanders competing with these teams.
They're not on the same level. Plain and simple, they're not as good.
No, they're
That's what
not.
I'm
But
saying,
you know what
because,
though?
I mean, obviously this isn't a discussion for right now as we're still in the playoffs, but kind of says a lot about how far this team has to go to be a legitimate Stanley Cup contender, which is sad, but I mean, at the same time, we're right there. We're one of the 8 teams left. And obviously, a lot had to do with our matchup in round
God,
one.
I hate the freaking Capitals. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just had to interrupt that because I'm just watching the replay of this goal and how they scored it. Screw the Capitals. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pete.
No, I mean, pretty much wraps it up, but I mean, obviously, the Capitals are now facing elimination. And I got to give some credit to my boy Carey here, because basically the last few months he's been saying how Pittsburgh's some unreal dynamic team, and we kind of laughed at him and said they're beatable. But I mean,
Hey, I had them in the
imagine we played them in round
I had them in the finals.
He did have him in the finals.
I have them in the finals
Okay.
with the Blues. So
You did.
I think I'm so far so good.
I believe me and Mike had the exact same finals with different winners. I think
Yeah.
I had Pittsburgh winning and he had St. Louis winning.
Exactly.
I just got to say to all those people that were getting on me for rooting against the Islanders last weekend of the season, our season's probably over 3 weeks ago if we won that game on Sunday against the Flyers.
I would go a step further and say definitely.
Yeah, there was no chance of us beating the Penguins. If we would have got to 5, I would have been shocked.
So, I mean, obviously the Islanders are off tomorrow. Well, today if you're listening, tomorrow, which you probably are. And then they play Game 4 at the Barclays Center on Friday. Islanders trying to even up the series. They pretty much have to even up the series. I mean, I'm not going out on a limb here and saying it's a must-win, but if you're going to lose both games at home, you're pretty much done. So, final thoughts, guys.
You just got to win on Friday and go from there. I mean, I don't think it really goes any further than this. I consider Friday, although it's not, by letter of the law, a must-win. This is as close to a must-win as you can possibly get. And if they do that, then you're 2 out of 3 again, and you have as good a chance as any. But yeah, I mean, you can't go down 3-1 with 2 road games upcoming. It's just not viable against this team.
This is fun though. This sure beats a first round knockout. We pat ourselves on the back for moral victories that we took it to 7 or we played Pittsburgh tight, a few years ago. This is
the best.
This is fun. I mean, this is what all those 23 years that we didn't experience this. This is what makes it so fun, because as much as last night sucked, and I don't think anyone needs to explain why it sucked so much. You woke up this morning and said, that's what it feels like to blow a game like that in heartbreak fashion. But you know what? We're still in this. It's 2-1, and the one thing this playoffs has shown with the Islanders anyway is there's really no such thing as momentum from game to game.
Nope, there's not. I agree.
Where you would think that they would be demoralized or they'd come out flying one game or the next game because of a prior result, and it seems like the opposite happens. So it's fun. Yeah, Friday, obviously, you got to find a way to get the win somehow. I expect they'll play well again. Will it be enough? I don't know. I expect the game will be tighter checking by both sides. I think you'll be a little more defensive-minded because I don't think the coaches want to see another 5-4 game where the shots are 40 apiece. But you just got to find a way to win somehow, some way. And for God's sake, the power play's got to get a little bit better. I know they scored twice already this series, but both their goals were really off rushes off the power play. They were not. I think they have 2 or 3 this series. I know obviously Bailey scored 1 last night. Tavares in game 1.
I think the Coolman goal was a power play goal.
Okay, was it all right? But it just seems like their power plays they haven't done a great job generating off the face off and kind of setting up in the zone. So this series, the refs have called more penalties than I think we were expecting for both sides, for the most part anyway, and they just have to make more of their opportunities. They got to bury their chances. So, but it's fun. This is the fun part of the year.
When I would not trade this for, well, I guess I would trade it to still be playing in June, but I mean, like, I could do this every year and be more than happy.
I wouldn't trade it for a draft lottery party or to find out who we should be picking sixth from Kazakhstan that I'll never hear of in 5 years.
All right, sure. I agree.
21 years old, 22 in a few months, and I've been waiting my whole life for this, and being there in Game 6, one of the better moments of my life. I mean, I've been to 3 career playoff games, and I've seen 3 overtime wins, so...
I do have to. I did this the other day. I've been to like 11 or 12, and I've seen 7, I think, overtime games. Like, this is a lot of overtime. I feel like this is. I feel like this isn't sustainable. This team has played a whole lot of games at home and that have gone to overtime over the last 3 years.
Game 6 was my first Islander playoff victory. I was 0-2 prior to that, both overtime losses. So I guess it was the building, the reason why they were losing when I was there. So. But yeah, Game 6 was, as far as sports moments for me, being there in person, it's either 1 or 2 on my list. Personal all-time, favorite memories of just seeing something live. So, it was fun. It really was.
It was so good to give me the flu. I got sick the next day because I think I was over exuberant. To me, yeah, number 1, easily going away. I can't think of anything that, I may have seen better moments, so to speak, in terms of like from a neutral observer, but emotionally, it just that one goal, it felt like, I know we haven't spoken since then, but it felt like 23 years of frustration just gone, just like that.
Yeah,
there's nothing like that.
No, that I agree. Emotionally, it was definitely the best thing I've experienced as far as sport goes in person. The only other high that was similar was when I was in person when Andy Chavez made that catch in Game 7 against the Cardinals in 2006.
Yeah, but they lost that game. So
no, you're right. That's what I'm saying. But no, I'm saying that was at that time. Obviously, that was as emotional or as high as I've ever been. And then I think Game 6 definitely surpassed it, and just pure bedlam and pandemonium, and obviously, again, it couldn't have been a better person to do it.
Absolutely. I remember just standing there watching the handshakes, literally repeating, "Holy fucking shit, this happened." I literally repeated that phrase about 20 times in a minute.
Can we say that?
We'll bleep it out later for the FCC. That's not worried about it.
Yeah, I'm sorry for cursing.
Yeah, we'll put this on when we put it on iTunes. We'll put on MA17 mature rating on it.
Explicit now.
Yeah, let's try to keep it at just that.
I'm flustered. I ain't know I was not allowed to curse, but I mean, that'll do it for us here today. Islanders are going to come back and win this series.
Yes.
And then we'll see you to preview round 3 against what looks like the Pittsburgh Penguins. So thank you for listening, and let's go Islanders.